Alright, intermediate algebra 8.5, B as in boy. We're continuing on with composition with functions, and that is the section that we're in right now. Composition with functions. Let's see. I guess probably the easiest way to do this is, remember when in the last video when we had f g of x, that meant the function of x times the g function of x. So f of x times g of x. Alright, what we're going to do, and we had these simple ways of doing this, like f plus g of x meant f of x plus g of x. Okay, so that's what that meant, and then when I would do this, I would write it out like this, and then I would go ahead and solve it. Alright, so this is just another symbolic way of writing something, and in this case it's going to be a composition of functions. And this is the stuff that confused me so much when I was a kid. And a composition with a function looks like this. That's an open circle. It's not a zero. It's just an open circle. So when I'm wanting to do the composition of functions, it looks like that. So what does a composition of functions mean? What does that mean that you're going to do with these? Well, a composition with functions, and I would like you to write it this way. I would like you to write whatever they're asking you to do, and I want you to write this next step. It means this. F of g of x. And we did this in the last lesson. You had some of these in your homework. Let me throw you back into this for just a second. If you look at lesson 8.4, numbers 41 to 46, those were all composition of functions. You just didn't know that you were doing them. So this is the way it's written. This is what it means, and we'll go ahead and just do one because, like I say again, you did these, so they shouldn't come too terribly difficult. So let's get some yellow here. That's kind of baby poop yellow, but okay. F of x equals x plus 5. G of x equals 2x. Alright, what they want us to do is start off and find f composite g, and some of the kids just say, instead of f composite g, because that's kind of a pain in the neck to say, is they'll just say fog of x, because they'll just make that little dot, that open dot, 0 and just call it fog. Don't do that in college. The professor will look at you like you're a loony, but anyway, fog is a lot easier than, say, composition. So then I write it as what it means, f of g of x, and then I go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve g of x first, my innermost, and g of x is 2x. So f of, instead of gx, I'm going to put a 2x in its place. Now I'm going to look at my f of x up here, and wherever I see an x, I'm going to put a 2x in its place. Okay? So f composite g of x equals 2x plus 5. Alright, notice on the next one they switch things around a little bit, and instead of looking at f of x or f of g of x, they did g of f of x, which is g of f of x. So we do the f of x first. What is the f of x? It's x plus 5. So g of f of x, if f of x is x plus 5, then we can put x plus 5 here instead of the f of x. And then we take our equation way up here, and whenever we see an x, we're going to put an x plus 5 in its place. So we did here, and now we have to do that here. And we can go ahead and distribute that and get that. And that's all there is to it. So just for some more practice on this composition, we're going to look in the problem set for 8.5 and do number 34, where it says f of x equals x minus 2 the quantity squared, and g of x equals x plus 1. Okay, so the first thing they want us to do is find that. Okay, so first of all, we're going to write this as f of g of x, and since we've got a negative 1 there, it's going to be f of g of negative 1. So we're going to look at this, and that says whenever we have an x, we're going to put a negative 1 in its place. So g of negative 1 equals 0. Okay, so now whenever I see a g of negative 1, I'm going to put a 0 in its place. So that f of 0, I'm going to use this formula, and that equals 0 minus 2, the quantity squared, equals negative 2, the quantity squared, equals positive 4. So f of g of negative 1 equals 4. And the b portion of this, g of f, is going to be done the same way, only we're going to do the, it's just going to be backwards. It's going to look like that, so we're going to find that first and then find the g. But other than that, you know, that's pretty much all there is to these composite functions. Alright, so I'm looking at the problem set for 8.5, and I'm looking at 37 through 40 here, because I want to explain what's going on, because they're asking you to answer the problems, but that's all they're giving you, and I know a lot of students are like, what the heck, I do not have any idea what you're asking me to do here. So, let's see if I can help you. F of 2, number 37, f of 2. They're winning a number there. Well, what is the 2? The 2 is the x. The f of 2 is the y value you get when you are at x equals 2. Alright, so let's make my pen bigger, and let's use blue. Let's use green since I don't have any green. So if I go over here 2, what is my y value to get to that point? My y value is the number 1. So f of 2, when I have, this is actually f of x, okay, when my x is 2, which they gave me right there, my y value is at 1. So 1 plus 5, so 1 plus 5 is my 6 there. So why am I just using the red instead of the blue? Well, the red is f of x, and that's what I have here. If I'm looking at a g of x, I'm going to be looking at these. So let's go ahead and do that. So for 38, g of negative 2. So that means my x is negative 2, and then to get down to this point right here, I had to go down 1, 2, 3. So negative 3 minus 5 equals negative 8. Alright, so let's look at one like 40. It has f of 5 minus g of 5. So f of 5, we go and we look at the top one, and we go over 5, and how far do we go up? We go up 3. So f of 5 is 3. The y value, when I put 5 in the x, when I go over 5, the y value is 3. That's what I'm looking for. Alright, this one right here. What is my y value when my x is 5 on the g? I went down 1 to get to my g. So when f is, or I'm sorry, when g is 5, my y value is negative 1. And what does it say to do with both of those? F of 5 is 3, subtract negative 1, or 3 plus 1 equals 4. That's the number they're looking for. It's the same thing with 45 to 52. Alright, so if we look at, well, let's look at 47. We're looking at f of 2. When we go over 2, it goes up. The red is the f of x, so we're going to go up to 3. So f of 2 is 3. G of 2 means that we again go over 2, but we go up to the blue line. So that gives us, we go up 2. Okay? So when we take f of 2 and g of 2 and add those together, like right here, 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay? That's all they're asking us to do. When you look at 49, so let's go ahead and get rid of this. 49 is f, which means f at, or f of g of, okay, so where is g of 0? When I go over 0, where am I on the g? I'm at 2. So g of 0 equals 2. So instead of g of 0, I'm going to write it f of 2. So now let's look at when x is 2, 1, 2, where am I on the f? I'm at 3. So f composite g of 0 is going to be 3, wherever this is, which is I go over 2 and I end up going up 3. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you, and you'll do fine with lesson 8.5.